Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marcus Aurelius, and this is a game I said I would never let's play, Dwarf Fortress. This is the 2014 version. Now, the reason I said I was never going to play this game, I had two reasons that I thought were really good ones. One, everyone does it. If you do a search for Dwarf Fortress in YouTube, you will find hundreds of Dwarf Fortress Let's Plays. And the other one is that, with the exception of the beginning of the game when you're getting started and when the occasional exciting thing like an invasion or a forgotten beast attack happens, the game is pretty slow moving and boring. And I've seen a lot of Let's Plays that started off really good, had a lot of promise, and then kind of dragged on. So I'm going to be addressing these concerns in a couple of ways. I'm going to cut out a lot of the game. I'm going to show you the setup at the beginning, I'm going to show you the first early parts, and then I will just cut out and show only when something interesting happens, like a migration wave, or a trader comes to tell of what's going on in the world, or we get attacked. Anytime something unique or interesting happens, I will record, but I won't be recording me setting up stockpiles and making sure there's enough food and all that stuff that takes so long in traditional Dwarf Fortress LPs. I've been really inspired by Daz24680's Dwarf Fortress series in that he tells a story. He really focuses a lot on the Legends viewer and what's going on with the history of the world, the history of the dwarves themselves, their civilization, the people that come and attack them, what's their story. And I intend to play this series like that. I intend to really roleplay it, talk a lot about the creatures that attack us and the dwarves themselves and what their histories are, and I will be going myself into Legends Viewer and ISO World if I can, and the other ancillary programs that really flesh out this game a lot. One thing though that I have to make very clear is that I will be playing this game my way. And what that means is this is not a tutorial. This is not a tutorial for new players. If you would like a tutorial, I highly recommend you check out Daz's videos, which do function very well as a tutorial, or you could just do a search in YouTube for Dwarf Fortress tutorial and you'll find a bunch. I play in certain ways that are not typical and maybe are not necessarily approved of by the community at large. To give you a quick example, I play this game for the history and the world building and the combat, and to lead my dwarves in battle and have them get named weapons and cool titles and make amazing artifacts and explore the depths and the caverns. What I don't play the game for is to frustrate myself with dwarves who have, for want of a better term, deep psychological problems. I consider these dwarves to be pioneers, to be explorers like Vasco da Gama, Christopher Columbus, Magellan, Lewis and Clark, Shackleton. You know, people who are tough and sturdy. So the idea that the whole fort can come crashing down because one dwarf's cat had a heart attack just doesn't sit well with me. It's not fun, it's frustrating, and I don't play with that. So there's a df hack command called remove bad thoughts that I use liberally, and what it does is it takes away all the bad thoughts of the dwarves. It prevents tantrum spirals. Now, this doesn't mean that I don't try to take care of my dwarves. I still want them to be happy. I'm still going to create an opulent dining room. I'm still going to give them all wonderful bedrooms. I'm still going to provide as much booze as they could drown themselves in. It's just that I don't want all this hard work and effort to come crashing down for something silly like someone's sock, is missing. It just doesn't do it for me. So if you think that's going to cause you a problem, this probably isn't going to be the Let's Play for you. If, however, you like battles and you like the world building of this game, then this Let's Play is indeed going to be for you. Now, I'm going to flash the settings on the screen right here that I use with the new player pack. I don't know the exact name of it, but I will provide a link to it in the description of the video. I change the settings in a couple ways. One, I turn off the aquifers. I don't like aquifers. What an aquifer is it's basically a layer or layers of stone or soil that are filled with water. so that when you dig down into them, they become like lakes. They become water that you have to pass through. If you want to know how to get through an aquifer, I highly recommend you check out Daz's video series, Sands of Iron, where he does just that, and it's really amazing. And it also shows you how frustrating it is. So I turn off aquifers in this world. They don't provide me any extra enjoyment. I lower the number of babies, so I set that as 10 for the whole fortress. And what else do I do? Everything else is on. Invasions are on, temperatures are on, weather is on. I use the Phoebus graphics pack, which many of you who've played the game before are familiar with, probably. I am not using Text Will Be Text, which is a plugin that this new version of Dwarf Fortress, or DF Hack specifically, has with it. It's really a great idea, actually. The problem with the game right now is that if you're using a graphics pack, what it does is it translates the letters of ASCII into graphics. And so sometimes if you're reading text, some of the letters are actually graphics, and it doesn't make any sense. So what Text Will Be Text does is it separates out the graphics with the text. But the problem is it changes the game in a lot of ways that I am not yet comfortable with. The world generation part is all ASCII, and even when you export the world for like Legends Viewer, it's in ASCII, and I just don't like that. And also it has this 3D effect so that you can see Z levels underneath the one you're currently on, which sounds like a great idea, but it confuses me because sometimes you can't tell the difference between what's the Z level you're on and what's the one below you. It's easier as you get further down, but I just as soon not use it at all. So I have it disabled. So if you are loading up the standard new player pack and the Phoebus graphics set, yours is not going to look exactly like mine. Don't worry about it. But if you want to know how I get that disabled, let me know in the comments and I'll tell you. Now, one thing that's going to make people, I believe, very excited is that, like my other LPs, I'm going to be naming the dwarves. So let's quickly go through the ground rules on that. If you would like a dwarf named after yourself, that's awesome. I'm happy to do that. Please just make a comment in this video, and this video only, a separate comment so that I can timestamp it, that says the name that you want your dwarf to be called. Unfortunately, I'm going to do this chronologically. That's the only way to be fair, so you can't necessarily suggest what kind of dwarf you'd like to be or what occupation. But if you'd like, you can provide a male or female name, and I will adjust it accordingly. However, you don't really have to. In this game, the male and female dwarves are functionally identical, especially since, again, I'm lowering the amount of children that can be born. So yeah, I'm looking forward to all of you participating and putting your names on these dwarves. Viewer participation is highly desirable and encouraged. So if you want to roleplay a little, if you want to speak as your dwarf or write a little story about your dwarf, or heck, even if you want to draw a picture of something that goes on in the series, I'll be happy to throw it up on the channel, on the video itself, assuming it's family friendly, of course. I am slightly unfamiliar with this new version of the game. Now, I have hundreds and hundreds of hours of experience with Dwarf Fortress in general, and I'm nowhere near a newbie, but there have been some changes in this game besides just big trees that I'm not used to. Like, for example, goblins now apparently climb walls and jump over pits, and so that's going to obviously impact how I defend my fortress. I would love any advice as things go on how to adapt to the new realities of this version. So that's about that. We've spent 10 minutes or so talking, so why don't we actually start and create a world. Now, one thing I always do is I always design a new world with advanced parameters, because there's very specific things that I like to see in my worlds. One thing I will note is this game is very keyboard intensive. There's a lot of typing involved, so while I try very hard in my Let's Plays to remove the sound of keyboard typing, I don't think I'm going to be able to in this one. I really apologize. I hope it will not be too big of a problem. Alright, so we're designing our new world, and the first thing I do is I go down to Medium Region and I copy it. So then I have the beginnings of my world. Now, I title it, let's just title it Marcus. Or Marcus World. There we go. It's nice. So this will be my specific world preset for this creator. We're going to keep the actual name of the world itself random, because one of the delightful things about this game is that it comes up with such ridiculous names. And the seed, of course, will be random. So we're going to go to Advanced Parameters with the E key. Okay, one of the things I change is I make the end year 150, simply because as you get further on in years when you're generating the history, the game goes much slower and slower, and I don't like generating long histories. But also, the earlier you stop, the more likely you are to have a whole lot of fantastical beasts and creatures. The longer you go, the more mundane the world becomes. So I just enjoy, I mean, goblins are great and all, but I'd like to be attacked by something mythical and cool. The next thing I like to do is, let's see here, mineral scarcity. 2500 I find makes minerals way too scarce. It's kind of exponential. So like I tried 500 and there are minerals everywhere. But if you go to like say 1000, they're much less rare. So it's not linear. So let's go with 750. Okay, that should provide plenty of minerals, but not like every stone is a mineral. The next changes that I make are specific to the caverns. I have very specific interests when it comes to the caverns. I like my caves to be wide open, like big giant antechambers. I do not like the honeycomb pattern kind of blah looking caverns where it's just a mess and you can't even see where your dwarves are going and what they're doing. That doesn't really engage me very much. So the way I fix that is I put the cavern layer openness min to 75 from 0. And that's 57, which is not what I'm shooting for here. 75, and then the passage density is the opposite. I put the minimum at 0, but the maximum at 25. This should generate a cavern layers that are, again, really open with a lot of wide open space, not so many twisty little random honeycomb passages. And finally, I like to give myself some space to work before I hit the first cavern layer. So I like to change the number of Z levels above layer 1 to, let's do 12. So if you're not familiar with this game, basically you have the surface and then you go down into the earth and eventually you hit 3 different cavern layers. All I'm doing here is I'm making it so the distance between the surface and the top cavern layer is further. So I have more area of just blank stone that I could build my fortress in. I am leaving it at default for the area between the other layers as they exist. And that's it. Those are the only things that I change. So at this point, I just say I am done. Then I will press F6 to save the world parameters. And let's generate the world. Now this could take some time, so, well, doesn't look like it's going too bad. So as you can see here on the right, the world itself is being generated, or rather, we're seeing a region of it. Now you'll notice that you can kind of get a feel for what it's looking like. You've got valleys with rivers, you have some forests. Over on the top right, you have mountains. The bottom left is also mountains, but the fact that they're yellow means that they're good aligned mountains. Just like the purple area to the top left implies that it's an evil plane area. And what's happening right now is the world itself has been created, but the histories of the civilizations that exist on this world are moving forward. And you can see roads being created, for example. In the mountains, on the edge of the mountains, the little dwarf statue-looking things are dwarven forts. And the little chest-looking things that are in kind of a aqua are human towns. And so trade is happening, roads are being created, empires are rising and falling. A lot is just going on right now as the history of the world itself is being generated. I was going to cut this out, but it's almost over, so I don't think it's too big of a deal. And you can see what part of the world is being zoomed in on as it says up the top, the human hamlet of Depujgjal, the tame prairie. Okay, and the world has been created. So you're allowed to kind of play with it. You can look around. So over here, for example, you can see that we have the ugly water. This is like a lake, and its coloring implies that it's a kind of an evil-aligned lake. So then you go over here, and you've got Mercs, the named Merc. The yellow here, again, is good. The Steps of Velvet. Or actually, I don't know if that's good or not, or if that's just kind of a plain steps. This, I think, is the Hill of Virginity. We don't want to start our fortress there. This is like Badlands, yeah, the Scholarly Desert. And this up here is also deserts. This is more like a sand desert, the Desert of Quiescence. So this is our world. Oh yeah, so it's the blue that's good. So the Righteous Hills. So these hills are good aligned hills, which means if you were to found your fortress on these hills, you are going to see more good creatures. Whereas if you were to found your fortress over on these hills, over here, the Blind Hills, you're likely to find evil creatures. I'm going to try to find a place that's neutral to embark on. I think evil's a bit too much and good is a bit too little. So I'm just going to try to find some place that's nice and in between. You look up here as a human town, the human hamlet of Thorogir, the Hills of Work. So that's really that. The world has been created. I'm going to export it so that I could use Legend Viewer later. And I'm going to accept it. There are a little under 30,000 historical figures, of which a little under 15,000 of them have died. So that means about a little over 15,000 are still alive. And in the course of this world, in this first 150 years, almost 170,000 different events have happened. And it is still the age of legends. So there are still legendary creatures roaming about that perhaps will decide to try to destroy our fortress. So that'll be exciting. So that's that. So please, by all means, comment in the video thread with the name that you want for your dwarf. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of dwarves for everyone, so I don't think we're going to have a situation where there's too many names. And I look forward to getting started and showing you Dwarf Fortress 2014. So, once again, I'm Marcus Aurelius. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.